Okay, so one thing which a lot of our newer members don't realize is I'm not actually the person who started Furry Valley. Um, FV wasn't known as FV back then, but it was actually started in 2003 by two people. One was called Satharim, and I think he was a shark, possibly. I didn't know him very well. And there was a guy called White Wolf. You can guess what he might have been. The first few years of FV, I was very young, so they're quite spotty. I don't have that many memories, so I'll fill you in with what I can. But this will be quite sparse until we get more sort of towards the last 10 years or so. So I joined in 2004. Originally found FV from an adult forum. I was not 18 in 2004. I wasn't even close to 18 in 2004. A place called Furry to Furry. It was a very small group of furs looking just to play RuneScape together, which was an old MMO. It still exists today, not quite in the same form as it was back then, but it still exists. We used to just hang out together in one of the locations on the game. We used to just fletch bows and arrows, just hang out, have a good time. There wasn't really voice chatting like you'd enjoy nowadays. So we literally would just type on the game, and the yellow text would appear above your head and then disappear a few seconds later. So you had to be paying attention. You couldn't AFK. There was nothing like this. We, I guess, had probably between about 20 and 40 members, and that stayed fairly consistent for several years. There was no real active attempts to grow, I suppose. We sort of got new members who would just casually come across us, but we lost members at probably a pretty similar rate. And I wasn't actually an admin for quite a long time. I wasn't even a high ranked member. I naturally ended up as a mid rank just because I played the game quite a bit. Those of you who are familiar with our Discord system will know like the fluff and nano fluff, that sort of thing. I was probably the same as what would be like a fluff or a killer fluff in FE today. So, moving on a few years, in about 2007, Satharim and White Wolf moved on. We had a new leader called Grey. Grey was a xenomorph demon guy. He was a very kind person, but seriously mentally ill. He had bipolar, schizophrenia, this sort of thing. And eventually things just became too much. He disappeared. I think he was only leader for a few months. And this is where things became trickier. It was fairly consistent with Satharim and White Wolf. But from here, Gray wanted me to become the next leader, but I was focused very hard on my schooling at this point, so I declined, and I actually became fairly inactive for some time at the late 2000s and early 2010s. And by default, the next person in line for leadership was a guy called Xanth. Xanth and I did not get along. He very strongly disliked me. And lo and behold, Xanth ended up being convicted of a fairly serious criminal offense. So he went away, but much more sad than that was the fact that as a result, he had a beautiful pet husky that used to video chat and show us. And they euthanized his pet husky because he went away and she couldn't be taken care of. So that was very sad. We were more upset about that than we were about him, to be fair. Our fortunes didn't really improve much from there. The next leader was a blue cat called Oni. He and his boyfriend were quite vindictive. They had an argument with another admin. I wasn't even an admin still at this time, and they decided to ban literally everyone except the two of them. I was fairly decent friends with Oni, and I was like, "What? Why have you done this?" And he felt somewhat bad about it, it seemed, but I was still almost completely inactive. I was very focused on my schooling at the time. So, moving on another couple of years, when I finished my master's degree, I was able to become more active again. And, so naturally I tried to find my old friends. I went to literally all the places where we used to hang out together. I could find absolutely no one though. Our homeworld was desolate. RuneScape is played on sort of different worlds, and you can use the same character on lots of different worlds. But we had one world which was our world, and no one was there. And the sort of clan chat room that we used a few years prior was empty persistently. And I probably was back on the game for 2 or 3 months until one day someone came into that clan chat and was like really amazed and surprised to see me there. And I'm like, well, where is everyone? What's happened? And he told me that they just all moved to a new homeworld and that the name of the clan had changed. At that point, we were the Furry clan. I mean, it's pretty generic, but that's what we were called. But they changed their name to Furry Menagerie, which those of you who've been here for at least 3 years will know that we had that name until quite recently. So I went into the Furry Menagerie clan chat to find that it was actually led by someone I knew from a few years previous called White Wolf, not the same White Wolf from 2003. White Wolf was a super interesting guy. He was a really sort of orthodox Christian rock musician. He produced his own music video. It got about 100,000 views on YouTube, so he seemed to be going places. I also remember he had some pretty strong issues because, you know, Orthodox Christian, he presented as straight, but he was not straight, and it sort of went against his religion. I remember that was very conflicting for him. And also with me being, you know, flamboyant, rather gay lion, he didn't approve too much of that. He obviously went quite strongly against his religion. So it was quite a shame, but he and I didn't get along too well because of this, but he recognized my skills as an admin, and he did set aside his personal feelings within a couple of months to promote me up to co-leader. We merged with another furry clan on the game. That clan was called Rawgasm. Furries are remarkably creative with names, as you can see. And for the first time, we had a decent-sized member base, probably 70, 75 members, somewhere around there. Now, I was only 20 years old at this point, so several years in the past still, and I was really nothing like how you guys know me today. I was, believe it or not, extremely shy, very quiet and introverted. Leading was not something that held any appeal to me at all. I was just really super friendly. I'd do anything, absolutely anything possible to help anyone in our clan, often to my own expense and neglect. Young Simba, or younger Simba perhaps, like so many of you, unfortunately suffered from severe depression. It really showed in the way that I treated myself. I'd often put myself down to give more than I really sensibly could to others, to the people around me that I cared about. So soon enough, White Wolf was becoming quite agitated with the game. He didn't like Jackbox, he didn't like their recent updates, and so his activity drastically declined. He and I both sort of knew that it was time for me to become leader, but back then, because we really didn't get on well, obviously the religion thing was a big thing. It took him quite a few months to actually hand over the leader position to me. I remember quite distinctly the day I got made leader. I was hyped as fuck. Don't get me wrong. I was really excited, but after it happened, literally, you know, within minutes of it happening, White Wolf was very angry and upset, and he just disappeared for the rest of the week, which you know, was kind of a kick in the teeth. I was frightened. I was genuinely frightened, not of him or anything like that, but for the first time, you have to think I'd been in FV for nearly 10 years at this point. But for the first time, I had no one to look up to. This was the first time where, you know, if anything went wrong, I couldn't look up and say, White Wolf, what do we do? And just remember, back then I was so naturally introverted and reclusive. Suddenly I was in the spotlight. I wasn't comfortable with that. I was very uncomfortable. I was terrified of upsetting people or making them think that I was a bad leader. I just wanted to do everything for everyone else so that they would like me, because obviously I suffered very badly from depression. I felt that if everyone else loved me, well, I'd start to love myself. The old lie you tell yourself, you know, back then I didn't have much experience with psychology. I hadn't read many research papers, and I truly believed that that was how I would end up loving myself. But this caused a lot of problems, not just for me, but because I was very, very, very much too kind over the next 2 or 3 years. some particularly unpleasant people were allowed to stay in FM for Menagerie for far longer than they really ever ought to have been allowed to. I was a failure as a leader, not because I didn't set a good example or because I didn't make good general decisions, but because those towards the bottom had to put up with tyrannical admins who I had promoted because I was too kind to kick or to ban or demote them. The admins that I promoted would threaten me, and every time that they ended up doing something really bad, they'd play the victim card, and then I'd be sympathetic towards them because I was too soft, and I was much too kind to people who really didn't deserve it. And I eventually lost it with one of them. There was this Australian guy called Sil, and he was extremely abusive in pretty much any situation possible where he could fight with any other member, he would take it. Very, very, very aggressive, vicious person. He would target people based on their mental health, try to damage them. And this was before Hoosie, who a lot of you will know is our tech lead, before he'd really stepped up to the plate. So this Sil guy was responsible for our website, our general technology and stuff. And he'd just done too many bad things too many times. And people were telling me, look, you need to get rid of him. He keeps getting away with all of this. And I was relying on him for our technology. And that's, I think, as well, why I allowed him so much rope, because I felt we needed him. But I banned him, and he was beyond furious, like properly angry, vicious psycho sort of angry. He attacked me, he attacked several others, not just in the game that we played, RuneScape. He was constantly harassing us on social media, Skype, other platforms. People used Skype back then, that shows you it's quite a few years ago still. It was a terribly toxic time, and I ended up deeply depressed, even more so than I had been before. He managed to get himself quite firmly entrenched with my best friend who I'd grown up with, and at this point I'd promoted my best friend to co-leader with an FM. Just to be clear, that was a deserved position. It wasn't that, oh, he's my friend, therefore I'll promote him. He did a lot of good things for us. He helped us out, led events. Pretty much within the scope of RuneScape, he did whatever he could for us. But unfortunately, Sil managed to get close enough that he turned that person against us, to the point where that guy then stole priceless items and artifacts from several of our established clan members, from the basic new members, right up towards the other admins, including a couple of people who are still in FV, and I know this is still very sensitive and touchy for them, so I don't want to dwell on it too much, but perhaps my biggest regret about everything the past 15 years is that I wasn't able to stop this, and I still feel bad about it. I see these people, they're still active here, and I don't think I'll ever forgive myself. I did I did my best in that situation, but they still, what happened to them happened to them, and you always wonder, could you do more? So yeah, I felt extremely low. I blame myself. I thought perhaps had I allowed Sil to stay, none of this would have happened. At this point, I had to ban the co-leader as well. There was no way in hell I could have allowed him to stay after what he'd done. It just wasn't. It never would have been acceptable. I remember I went for a lot of long walks, very long walks, late at night. It was winter, December, deep in the middle of winter. It was cold, it was dark, it was rainy. My mind and my body went to places they should have not gone to, dark and healthy places that I hope none of you ever have to experience. I took 3 months off of work because I was that severely depressed. And on more than one occasion, I stood on the edge of a railway platform, just waiting, thinking. In my mind, I jumped so many times, but my body wouldn't move. I didn't know why then, and I don't really know why now, but I survived. Throughout all of this, I was still leading FM, doing my best to hold them all together and to take care of them. Leadership, again, as I've said, was never something that came naturally to me. And I learned slowly, slowly, slowly. I learned and I managed to improve. Mistakes were painful and frequent, but gradually, through the mid 2010s, I grew FM from around 70 people when I acquired it to 500, which was the most possible in the game. As I became older, I was able to manage my mental health better. And in order to sort of get over my depression, as I spoke about earlier tonight in the Fluff Talk, I started to treat myself as if I mattered too. And it felt selfish at the time, I suddenly was putting myself first, sometimes which I never would have done. But long term, I've been able to help others far more because of it. Now, at the end of 2017, I became very concerned that Jackbox, the company that made RuneScape, were really driving the game into a ditch. And to be clear, I still firmly believe this, as does pretty much every existing player who's played for quite some time, from which it'd never recover. So I made the tough decision at the end of 2017 to branch out from RuneScape. I only played RuneScape at this point, and I'd not really played anything else for the best part of 15 years. I simply wanted to try to find my clan a new forever home, to find a game kind of like RuneScape, which we'd all migrate to together, so that we wouldn't lose the friendships that we built up over so many years and our clan structure. We initially scaled up to 5 games. This was because between all of our admin team, which was 8 people at the time, we had kind of some amount of knowledge on 5 games. I can't remember exactly what they were, but I think it was something like RuneScape, Diablo 3, World of Warcraft, and a couple of others, which unfortunately escaped me. Maybe League of Legends was one, actually. That would make sense. I was playing League at the time, yeah. League of Legends must have been one. But perhaps what was the most surprising thing to me, I was looking for an exodus for us. I was essentially saying, okay, well, look, our ship is sinking. Let's go and find another ship. But we found that the opposite happened. Instead of us moving to a different game, furries who played those other games entered FM. It was sort of the opposite of what I expected. It was never even slightly the intention that we would soak up furry players of these new games, these new communities to which we were expanding. But somehow it happened. And very quickly we'd gone up to 1,000 members. Now, I remember feeling really overwhelmed. Most poignantly, I went to a walk to the grocery store late at night. It turns out that this is something Simba does when he thinks he goes out for walks when it's too dark and scary outside. For the first time, I had the thought, there are absolutely not enough hours in the day for me to speak to everyone whose presence I'm grateful for. Just a simpler thought as that. And, it was incredibly sobering and it was saddening. But this was no longer about what I personally wanted or what I personally needed. My community, vastly growing, needed me to put aside what I personally wanted to focus on what they needed. 1,000 people is a little bit more important than what I want. So I think an important point to clarify here is that this doesn't mean I was regressing to the old state of self-neglect that I had when I was in my early 20s. There's a very key difference this time. Instead of sacrificing myself because I felt unworthy to those I loved, to those that were depending on me, this time I was completely confident, and with self-deference I felt and still do absolutely feel without any doubt that taking a hit to my personal happiness is worth it for the happiness that I can bring to thousands of others through the excellent work and professional position within the furry fandom that I've created for myself here. I certainly don't hate myself or feel unworthy or have any of the same depression that I did when I was much younger. Every night I go to bed happy, that I've been able to continue creating such an incredible future for my family, all of you. And every morning I wake up eager to do more. So moving towards the present day a little more now, towards the start of 2019, we were a Discord platform with about 15 games I think we supported at the time. We had a Twitter account with maybe 500 followers, which was run by 2 admins at the time. One of them isn't with us anymore. The other is Alexi, who, the big fopper. I'm sure quite a few of you have seen around. I don't think we might have had a minimal presence on YouTube. We didn't have a Twitch or anything like that, and we probably had a minimal Facebook. But I met a rather incredible person on Telegram, and his name was Blaze. And Blaze was exactly like me, but 10 years younger. If I sort of pictured myself 10 years ago, that was Blaze, absolutely to a T. And Blaze had created a set of services on Telegram, whereas on Discord we were more of a gaming platform and we provided clans and events and that sort of thing. Blaze owned not quite a company, but an organization called Furworks. And through that, he offered several services. He offered chat rooms called YIF links. Again, furries and names were not the most creative. He offered a service called Fur Stickers, which was if you ever wanted stickers for your character or just stickers for a species, you can go and look in that channel. Fur Stickers still exists. We don't have access anymore, unfortunately. But you can still type in Fur Stickers on Telegram and you can see the excellent work that he procured over the time in which he was running it. And there were a couple of other things as well. For example, he ran a directory where other furries could list their groups and channels and that we could market for them. And in return, they would put a link back to Furworks so that we would get referrals through that. So Blaze, Blaze and I were a little bit sneaky. I didn't tell the other admins of FM this at the time, but Blaze and I had agreed that we would merge FM and Furworks together to become what is now known as Furry Valley. A lot of people say, oh, they rebranded because of this reason, this reason. No, the reason why we rebranded is simply because we didn't feel that it was fair to keep either the FM or the FW brand, and so we brought them together into this future-facing brand. I mean, this is why FV's mascot, for example, Kiros, wears a nano suit, why our colours are all blue and purples and greens. We've got a large focus on astronomy, all this kind of stuff, because we're looking to the future. And our tagline became the future of the furry fandom. That's still our tagline today. So Blaze, in order to get my admins in FM to approve of Blaze, what I did was I said that he should write an admin application, much like everyone else did, and no one knew who he was. And at the time, the way that we resolved admin applications was that every senior admin, you can think of that nowadays as tier 4 and above, would review every single application and would grade them on a scale of 0 to 10 for each of 6 different situations. Now, to give you an idea of scale, the cycle where Blaze applied, we had 8 admin applicants. The most recent cycle, we had 216 admin applicants, so massive growth. At the time, before Blaze applied, the highest average score that we'd ever got on an admin application was 7.7. Blaze applied, wrote 4,000 words. I kid you not, wrote 4,000 words for his admin application, got an average score of 9.6, which was just unbelievably much better than anyone else we'd ever had. And so was given an admin position. Meanwhile, on the Telegram side, Blaze was convincing his 2 admins. We had about 30 on FM at the time. He had 2 that he had to convince that, hey, this guy's good, we're doing this. He managed to do that. So I introduced Blaze, and the senior admins were very impressed with him from the moment he came in. He was absolutely excellent, and we told them at that point, this is what we're doing. Is he good enough? ? And thankfully they they liked him a lot, and they were pleased enough with his work that they accepted him, and they accepted that we would become one community. So this is how FV developed its presence on Telegram. We initially, at first, we had different names still. The FW side on Telegram, we were planning on reworking it all just because it was when Blaze made it, he didn't know the difference between the channel and the group. He was brand new to Telegram, so we had to have some fancy bot functionality to fix that up for us. So we were planning on remaking it anyway. And we did that in April 2019, I believe it was. The existing FW and YIF services were removed, and we created new FV services on there, which Blaze and I co-ran, as well as on Discord as well, and Twitch and Twitter. We were equal co-owners, basically. And that continued until August 2019, at which point, Blaze and I were in a relationship by that point. We were very, 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 very close. As I say, I've never met anyone quite so much like me. And it sounds quite soft and quite soppy, but I probably never loved anyone quite like I loved him. But he had severe mental illness, no fault of his own, but he's got an illness called paranoid personality disorder. And it got to the point where I was spending probably 4 hours a day just trying to keep him together, stopping him from falling apart, because he was convinced that everyone who liked him was out to get him, especially me. He really was convinced of that. When nothing could have been further from the truth. I loved him to bits, and it got to the point where it was just too much. I couldn't spend this much time looking after him and taking care of him. He had my phone number, and he would frequently call when I was sleeping just because he needed me, which was okay. But after 6 months of that, I couldn't cope with it anymore. So I said to him, okay, this is where we part ways. Go and get some help. Go and get some proper psychological help. And I said to him, come back when you're ready. And, I know who he is. I could go and find him. But it's been nearly a year now, and I still trust that when he is ready, he will come back. In fact, I would be very surprised if he's not already back. I don't know who he is within FV, but I'd bet money he's here somewhere. And I'm sure that when the time is right in his mind and when he feels comfortable, he'll show himself. And, we have had many amazing people come and go throughout the years. But it is absolutely the case that FV would not be in the position it is today without the fantastic work that Blaze put in. Blaze did our designs, did our logo, did our branding, did a lot of our marketing. Fantastic. Perhaps the greatest person I've ever had the privilege to work with. So for the past 11 months or so now, I've been leading FV. We've had a great tier of admins beneath me, the T6s, who used to be called the level 5s, T5s and so on beneath that. We've expanded now into 25, approximately 25, something like that, 25 games or thereabouts, with 40,000 members. Over 100 countries our members come from, including a couple of places I shamefully didn't know were countries. And we're on several different platforms, and it's just, it's really remarkable. You think, when I was a little cub, we were in that bank on that game and just chilling, making some bows and arrows. It's beyond words, really, that you can go from that to what we have today. It just seems impossible, but there you go. And as you see, my story is intertwined with FV's story. And that's not just something unique to me. Everyone who's been here and everyone who's still here has left their paw prints in our legacy. Furry Valley's history and present is my history and present, and it's my privilege, it's my absolute privilege, that Furry Valley's future will not only be my future, but every single one of your futures. And that's pretty much all I've got to say. Thanks everyone so much. This community is my life and my home, and it wouldn't be what it is without all of you. I'll be forever grateful.